Detective Lisa Johnson had always believed that wearing the badge meant something special. After 15 years on the Chicago Police Department, she still felt a surge of pride every time she put on her uniform. The deep blue fabric, the polished silver badge, and the weight of responsibility it carried never got old for her. That Tuesday evening started like any other. Lisa had just finished her shift at the Southside Precinct, but instead of heading straight home, she had volunteered for a community outreach program at Roosevelt Elementary School. The kids always loved when officers visited, and Lisa enjoyed answering their endless questions about police work. Some asked about the handcuffs, others wanted to know if she had ever arrested a bad guy, and a few brave ones asked if they could try on her police hat. The event had gone perfectly. Third graders clustered around her as she explained how fingerprints work, using an ink pad to let them make their own prints on small cards. Their teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, had thanked her multiple times for taking the time to visit. These moments reminded Lisa why she had become a police officer in the first place. She wanted to serve her community and make a difference in people's lives. As she walked back to her patrol car, Lisa checked her watch. It was almost 8 in the evening, and she realized she had not eaten anything since lunch. Her stomach rumbled, reminding her that she needed to grab something before the long drive home. The neighborhood around the school was familiar to her from years of patrol work, and she knew there was a small convenience store just 2 blocks away. The store, called City Corner Market, was nothing fancy. It had been there for decades, serving the local community with basic groceries, snacks, and everyday items. The owner, Mr. Patel, knew most of the regular customers by name and always had a friendly word for the police officers who stopped by. Lisa had been there countless times over the years, usually to grab a quick coffee or a sandwich during her breaks. The electronic chime announced her arrival as she pushed through the glass door. The familiar smell of fresh coffee and the hum of refrigeration units greeted her. Lisa nodded to Mr. Patel behind the counter, who looked up from his newspaper and smiled. She had not changed out of her uniform yet, so her badge was clearly visible on her chest, and her duty belt with radio, handcuffs, and service weapon was still secured around her waist. Lisa made her way to the snack aisle, looking for something quick and easy to eat on the drive home. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a bright glow over the rows of chips, crackers, and candy bars. She picked up a bag of trail mix and a bottle of water, then wandered over to the small deli section where they kept pre-made sandwiches and salads. As she stood there reading the ingredients on a turkey sandwich wrapper, she heard the door chime again. Through the reflection in the glass of the refrigerated case, she saw 2 police officers enter the store. They were both white men, probably, in their 30s, wearing uniforms from the neighboring Westfield Police Department. Lisa recognized the different shoulder patches and badge design. Though she did not know these particular officers personally. At first, she did not think much of it. Police officers from different departments crossed paths all the time, especially in areas where jurisdictions bordered each other. She continued reading the sandwich label, trying to decide if she wanted turkey or ham. But something felt different about the way these officers were moving through the store. Instead of heading to the coffee machine or the snack aisle like most cops would, they seemed to be walking with purpose toward her section of the store. Lisa glanced up from the sandwich display and noticed that both officers were looking directly at her. The taller of the 2 officers had short blonde hair and a thick mustache. His name tag read Morrison. The other officer was shorter and stockier, with dark hair and a stern expression. His name tag said Stevens. Both men had their hands resting on their duty belts, a posture that suggested they were ready for some kind of confrontation. Lisa felt a strange knot forming in her stomach. In all her years of police work, she had developed a sixth sense about when situations were about to go wrong. The way these 2 officers were approaching her, the intensity in their eyes, and the deliberate way they were positioning themselves made her uncomfortable. She tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they recognized her from somewhere and wanted to say hello. Maybe they were just being cautious because they were in an unfamiliar area. But as they got closer, Lisa could see that their expressions were not friendly or welcoming. Morrison reached her first. positioning himself directly in front of her while Stevens moved to her left side. Lisa straightened up from the sandwich display, still holding the turkey sandwich in her hand. She was confused but tried to remain calm and professional. "Good evening, officers," she said politely, using the same tone she used when greeting fellow law enforcement officers. She expected them to respond in kind. Maybe introduce themselves or ask how her shift had gone. Instead, Morrison's response caught her completely off guard. "Ma'am, I need to see some identification," he said in a stern, authoritative voice that people usually reserve for suspects or traffic stops. Lisa stared at him for a moment, thinking she must have misunderstood. She was clearly wearing a police uniform, complete with badge, name tag, and all the equipment that came with the job. Her patrol car was parked right outside the store, visible through the large front windows. "I'm sorry, what?" she asked, genuinely confused by the request. Stevens stepped closer, his hand moving closer to his weapon. "You heard him. We need to see your ID and we need to see it now." The situation was becoming surreal. Lisa looked down at her uniform, then back at the two officers. She pointed to her badge, which was clearly visible and properly displayed on her chest. "I'm a police officer," she said slowly, as if explaining something obvious. "I work for the Chicago PD, Southside Precinct. I just finished a community event at the elementary school down the street." Morrison's expression did not change. If anything, he seemed to become more suspicious and hostile. "Anyone can buy a fake uniform online these days," he said dismissively. "We've had reports of someone impersonating a police officer in this area." "You match the description." Lisa felt her heart rate increase. This was not just a misunderstanding anymore. These officers were seriously suggesting that she was impersonating a police officer, despite the fact that she was wearing a complete, authentic uniform and had all the proper equipment. She reached slowly for her wallet, keeping her movements deliberate and non-threatening. Years of training had taught her how to de-escalate tense situations, and she was hoping that showing her credentials would quickly resolve this bizarre encounter. "Look, I understand you're just doing your job," she said calmly, "but I can show you my badge number. My department ID and my patrol car is right outside. I've been a police officer for 15 years. As she spoke, other customers in the store began to notice the commotion. An elderly woman pushing a small cart stopped in the middle of the aisle to watch. A young man near the refrigerated drinks pulled out his phone, and Lisa could see him pointing the camera in their direction. What had started as a simple stop for a sandwich was turning into something much more serious, and Lisa had no idea how much worse it was about to get. Lisa pulled out her police identification card with steady hands, though inside she was feeling more confused by the minute. The plastic card had her photo, badge number, and official department seal. She held it out toward Morrison, expecting this whole strange situation to end quickly. Once he saw her credentials, but instead of taking a quick look and apologizing for the mix-up, Morrison barely glanced at the ID before shaking his head dismissively. "This could be fake too," he said, his voice getting louder. "These days you can make anything look real with the right printer." Stevens moved even closer to Lisa, now standing just arm's length away. She noticed that both officers had unsnapped the safety straps on their holsters, a clear sign they were treating her as a potential threat. The absurdity of the situation was starting to hit her. Here she was, a decorated police officer with 15 years of experience, being treated like a criminal by two officers who refused to believe the evidence right in front of their eyes. "Officers, please," Lisa said, keeping her voice calm and professional despite the growing frustration building inside her. "My patrol car is parked right outside. You can see the Chicago PD markings, the computer system, everything. I can show you my radio, my equipment, my badge number is right here." She pointed to the small numbers engraved on her silver badge, then reached for her radio to demonstrate that it was connected to the Chicago Police Department's communication system. But as she moved toward her duty belt, Stevens grabbed her wrist firmly. "Don't reach for anything," he commanded sharply. "Keep your hands where I can see them." By now, the situation had attracted the attention of everyone in the store. Mr. Patel had come out from behind the counter, his face showing concern and confusion. The elderly woman with the shopping cart had moved closer, whispering to another customer about what was happening. The young man who had pulled out his phone earlier was now openly recording the encounter, and Lisa could see at least 2 other people had their phones out as well. Lisa felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her. Not only was this situation completely unnecessary, but it was now being witnessed and recorded by multiple people. She knew that in today's world, videos like this could spread across social media in minutes. The last thing she wanted was to become the center of some viral incident. "Look," she said, trying one more time to reason with the 2 officers, "I understand there might be some confusion, but I'm telling you the truth. I'm a police officer. I work the South Side beat. I know Lieutenant Martinez at your department. I was just at Roosevelt Elementary doing a community program with the kids." Morrison's expression hardened even more. "Save your stories," he said coldly. "We've heard it all before. People like you think you can just put on a uniform and fool everyone." The phrase, "people like you," hit Lisa like a physical blow. The way Morrison said it, with such contempt and disgust, made his meaning crystal clear. This was not just about a suspected impersonation. This was about something much deeper and more troubling. Stevens seemed to sense that Morrison had crossed a line with his comment, but instead of correcting his partner, he doubled down on the aggressive approach. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back," Stevens ordered, reaching for his handcuffs. Lisa's heart began racing. "You're going to handcuff me? Are you serious? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm a police officer." "Turn around now," Morrison repeated, his hand now resting on his weapon. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The other customers in the store were now openly staring. Lisa could hear murmurs of confusion and concern from the small crowd that had gathered. Someone said, "That doesn't look right," while another voice whispered, "She's wearing a real uniform." Mr. Patel stepped forward tentatively. "Officers, excuse me, but I know this lady. She comes in here all the time. She's always been very nice and professional. I think there might be some mistake." Morrison turned toward the store owner with an irritated expression. "Sir, please step back and let us do our job. This is a police matter." Lisa felt trapped. She knew that resisting would only make things worse, but cooperating with what she believed to be an unlawful detention went against everything she stood for as a law enforcement officer. She also knew that with multiple people recording, her response to this situation would likely be scrutinized by everyone from her supervisors to the general public. "Please," she said one more time, "just call my precinct. Call Chicago PD Dispatch. They can verify who I am in 30 seconds. Stevens ignored her request and moved behind her. "Last warning. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." With no good options left, Lisa slowly turned around. She felt Stevens grab her right arm and pull it behind her back, then her left arm. The cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around her wrists with a sound that seemed to echo through the silent store. The humiliation was overwhelming. In all her years as a police officer, Lisa had never been handcuffed. She had put handcuffs on countless suspects and arrestees, but experiencing it from the other side was deeply disturbing. The metal was tight against her wrists, and the position forced her shoulders into an uncomfortable angle. "This is unbelievable," she said, her voice beginning to show the strain of the situation. "You're making a huge mistake." Morrison moved in front of her again, his face showing no sympathy or doubt about their actions. "We'll see about that. We're going to sort this all out down at the station." Stevens began searching through Lisa's duty belt, removing her radio, her service weapon, and her other equipment. He handled everything roughly, as if he were processing evidence from a crime scene rather than dealing with a fellow officer's gear. "Her weapon's loaded," Stevens announced to Morrison, as if this were somehow suspicious rather than standard procedure for any on-duty police officer. The crowd of onlookers had grown larger. Lisa could see customers who had just entered the store stopping in shock at the scene before them. The phones pointed in her direction felt like spotlights, capturing every moment of her humiliation for the world to see. Mr. Patel approached the officers again, this time more boldly. Officers, please, I really think you're making a mistake. This lady has been coming to my store for years. She's always been respectful and professional. I've seen her help people in the neighborhood. She even helped catch a shoplifter here last month. Morrison's response was sharp and dismissive. Sir, I told you to step back. We know what we're doing. Lisa felt tears of frustration building in her eyes, but she forced herself not to cry. She knew that showing emotion would only make her appear less credible to these officers who had already decided she was guilty of something. Instead, she focused on maintaining her dignity and professionalism, even while handcuffed and being treated like a criminal. My badge number is 4427, she said clearly, making sure the people recording could hear her. Chicago Police Department, Southside Precinct. You can verify this information with one phone call. But Morrison and Stevens seemed determined to continue with their course of action, regardless of the mounting evidence that they were making a serious error. What had started as a simple misunderstanding was rapidly becoming something much more serious, with consequences that none of them could have imagined. The cold tile floor of the convenience store pressed against Lisa's knees as Stevens forced her to sit down. The handcuffs behind her back made it impossible to balance properly, and she had to lean against the display rack to keep from falling over completely. The metal shelving dug into her shoulder, but it was nothing compared to the emotional pain of being treated this way. 20 minutes had passed since the officers had first approached her, and the situation kept getting worse instead of better. Morrison had called for backup, claiming they had apprehended someone impersonating a police officer. Lisa could hear him on his radio, speaking in official police codes that she understood perfectly from her own years of experience. We have a subject in custody for possible impersonation of a law enforcement officer, Morrison reported to his dispatcher. Subject is wearing what appears to be a Chicago PD uniform, but we believe it to be fraudulent. Requesting a supervisor. To the scene. Lisa closed her eyes and tried to control her breathing. She had been trained in de-escalation techniques, stress management, and crisis response, but nothing had prepared her for being on the receiving end of such treatment. The worst part was knowing that everything was being recorded by multiple witnesses, and that this humiliating moment would likely follow her for the rest of her career. The young man who had started recording when the incident began was still holding his phone, though he had moved closer to get a better angle. Lisa could see the red recording light, and she wondered what story this video would tell when it eventually made its way to social media. Would people see an officer being wrongfully detained, or would they just see another arrest in a convenience store? An older woman who had been shopping for groceries put down her basket and approached Stevens. She was probably in her 60s, with gray hair and a determined expression that suggested she was not easily intimidated. "Excuse me, officer," she said firmly, "but I've been watching this whole thing, and something is very wrong here. This woman has been polite and respectful the entire time. She's shown you her identification, she's told you where she works, and she's been completely cooperative. What more do you want?" Stevens looked annoyed by the interruption. "Ma'am, this is police business. Please move along and let us handle this situation." But the woman was not backing down. "I'm not moving anywhere. I've lived in this neighborhood for 40 years, and I know good police work when I see it. This is not it." Her words seemed to embolden some of the other customers. A middle-aged man near the coffee machine spoke up as well. "I agree with her," he said. "I watched the whole thing from the beginning. This lady was just shopping for food, like everyone else. She wasn't bothering anybody, she wasn't acting suspicious, and her uniform looks completely real to me." Morrison turned toward the growing group of witnesses with an expression of frustration and anger. "All of you need to step back and mind your own business. This is an active police investigation." But instead of dispersing, more people began speaking up. The store had continued to fill with customers during the incident, and word was spreading quickly about what was happening. Some people had come in specifically because they had heard about the situation from friends, or seen posts on social media. A teenage girl who worked at the restaurant next door had come over during her break. She looked at Lisa with sympathy and recognition. "Hey, aren't you the officer who came to our school last month?" she asked. "You did that presentation about internet safety for our computer class? I remember you because you were really nice and answered all our questions." Lisa looked up at the girl and managed a small smile despite her circumstances. "Yes, that was me. I remember that presentation." The girl turned to Morrison and Stevens with confusion. "Why are you arresting her? She's a real police officer?" "She showed us her badge and everything when she came to our school." Morrison's face was getting redder by the minute. "Look, kid, anyone can visit a school and claim to be a cop. That doesn't prove anything." But the damage was already done. More and more witnesses were coming forward with information that supported Lisa's identity. Mr. Patel had found some old security footage on his store's system that showed Lisa in uniform making purchases over the past several months. A customer pulled up a local news article on her phone about a recent community event where Lisa had been photographed in uniform with the same badge number she had given earlier. Despite all this evidence, Morrison and Stevens refused to budge from their position. If anything, they seemed to become more stubborn and defensive as the evidence mounted against their actions. "All of this could be fake," Morrison insisted. "People stage these things all the time. Photos can be doctored, news articles can be fabricated, and school visits can be arranged by anyone." Lisa could not believe what she was hearing. The level of denial and stubbornness was beyond anything she had encountered in her own police work. Even when presented with overwhelming evidence that they were wrong, these officers were doubling down on their mistake rather than admitting they had made an error. Stevens walked over to Lisa's patrol car, which was still parked outside the store. Through the large windows, everyone could see him examining the vehicle, looking for signs that it might be fake or stolen. The car had all the proper markings, official license plates, and equipment that would be impossible for a civilian to obtain legally. When Stevens returned to the store, his partner looked at him expectantly. "Well?" Morrison asked. Stevens hesitated for a moment, and Lisa could see uncertainty in his eyes for the first time since the incident began. "The car looks legitimate," he admitted quietly. "It has all the right equipment, the computer system, everything." For a brief moment, Lisa felt hopeful that this nightmare might finally be coming to an end. Surely now they would realize their mistake and release her, but Morrison was not ready to give up. "Stolen cars look legitimate too," he said. "We need to run the plates and check the VIN number. This whole thing could be an elaborate setup." Lisa felt her heart sink again. It was becoming clear that no amount of evidence would convince these officers that they were wrong. They had committed to a course of action, and their pride was preventing them from backing down. Even when faced with facts that clearly contradicted their assumptions, the crowd of witnesses continued to grow, and their voices were becoming more critical of the officers' actions. Someone had called the local news station, and Lisa could see a reporter with a camera setting up outside the store. The situation was rapidly spiraling out of control, and she knew that every minute that passed would make it harder for everyone involved to recover from what was happening. During all of this chaos, Lisa maintained her composure and dignity. She answered questions politely when spoken to, provided information when requested, and tried to de-escalate tensions even while being treated as a criminal. Her professional training was evident in every interaction, which made the officers' continued suspicion seem even more unreasonable to the witnesses. As she sat on that cold floor, handcuffed and humiliated, Lisa realized that this incident would likely change her life forever. Whether it ended well or badly, the videos being recorded would follow her wherever she went. The question was whether the truth would ultimately prevail, or whether the damage to her reputation and career would be permanent. The sound of approaching sirens indicated that backup was finally arriving, and Lisa could only hope that whoever was responding would bring some sanity and professionalism to this increasingly bizarre situation. The sound of car doors slamming outside the convenience store brought a moment of silence to the tense scene. Lisa looked up from her uncomfortable position on the floor, hoping that whoever had arrived would bring some common sense to this nightmare. Through the large windows, she could see a police supervisor getting out of a marked patrol car, along with another officer, Lieutenant Patricia Wong. entered the store with the confident stride of someone who had dealt with difficult situations throughout her career. She was an Asian American woman in her mid-40s, with 22 years of experience in law enforcement. Wong had built a reputation for fairness and professionalism, which is why she had been promoted to supervise some of the more challenging officers in the Westfield Police Department. The moment Wong walked through the door and saw Lisa handcuffed on the floor, her expression changed from professional curiosity to shock and concern. She immediately recognized Lisa from interdepartmental meetings and training sessions they had attended together over the years. "What in the world is going on here?" Wong demanded, looking from Morrison to Stevens with disbelief. Morrison straightened up, clearly trying to justify their actions to his supervisor. "Lieutenant, we responded to reports of someone impersonating a police officer in this area. The suspect was wearing what appeared to be a Chicago PD uniform, but we have reason to believe it's fraudulent." Wong looked down at Lisa, then back at Morrison with growing anger. "Officer Morrison, do you realize who this is?" "She claims to be a police officer, but we think she's lying," Stevens chimed in, trying to support his partner. "She's got fake identification and everything." Wong knelt down next to Lisa, her face showing embarrassment and concern. "Detective Johnson, I am so sorry about this. I know exactly who you are. We've worked together on that joint task force last year, remember?" Lisa nodded, relief flooding through her body for the first time in over 30 minutes. "Yes, Lieutenant Wong, the drug trafficking case in the warehouse district. We spent 3 weeks working together on that investigation." Wong immediately turned to Stevens. "Uncuff her right now." "This is Detective Lisa Johnson from Chicago PD. She's been a police officer longer than both of you combined." But Morrison was not ready to back down, even in front of his supervisor. "How do we know? You're not being fooled too? This could all be part of some elaborate scheme." The lieutenant's expression turned ice cold. "Officer Morrison, I'm giving you a direct order. Remove those handcuffs immediately." Stevens looked nervously between his partner and his supervisor, clearly understanding that they were in serious trouble. With shaking hands, he pulled out his handcuff key and freed Lisa's wrists. The relief of getting the metal restraints off was immediate, but the damage to her dignity and reputation had already been done. Lisa stood up slowly, rubbing her wrists where the handcuffs had left red marks. Her uniform was wrinkled and dirty from sitting on the floor, and she could feel the eyes of all the witnesses still watching her every move. "Detective Johnson, again, I cannot apologize enough for what happened here," Lieutenant Wong said sincerely. "This should never have occurred, and I promise you there will be consequences for this incident." Lisa appreciated the apology, but she was still processing everything that had happened. The humiliation, the disrespect, and the obvious bias she had experienced were not things that could be easily forgotten or forgiven. Mr. Patel approached them with a concerned expression. "Officers, I tried to tell them that she was a real police officer. She comes in here all the time, always very professional and kind. I don't understand how this happened." Wong thanked the store owner for his input, then turned back to Morrison and Stevens. "Both of you outside. Now, we need to have a serious conversation about what just took place here." As the 3 Westfield officers stepped outside the store, Lisa was left standing among the crowd of witnesses who had supported her throughout the ordeal. The teenage girl from the restaurant came over to her with a worried expression. "Are you okay? That was really messed up what they did to you." Lisa managed a weak smile. "I'm okay, thank you. And thank you for speaking up for me. That took courage." The older woman who had confronted the officers earlier also approached Lisa. "Honey, I hope you're going to do something about this. What those officers did was wrong, and everyone here saw it." Lisa nodded, but she was not sure what her next step should be. She knew that filing a complaint would likely lead to an investigation, media attention, and possibly a long legal battle. On the other hand, letting this incident slide would send the message that such behavior was acceptable. Outside, she could see Lieutenant Wong having what appeared to be a very heated conversation with Morrison and Stevens. Their body language suggested they were being severely reprimanded, But Lisa wondered if that would be enough. The damage had already been done, not just to her personally, but to the relationship between law enforcement and the community. The young man who had recorded the entire incident approached Lisa carefully. "Ma'am, I got everything on video. The whole thing from start to finish. I can send you a copy if you want it." Lisa looked at his phone, knowing that the video probably contained some of the most humiliating moments of her life. But she also knew it might be crucial evidence if she decided to pursue formal action against the officers. "Yes, please," she said. "I would appreciate having a copy." As they exchanged contact information, Lisa's mind began racing through all the implications of what had just happened. She thought about her 15-year career, her reputation in the community, and the trust that people placed in police officers. This incident had shaken all of that, but more than anything, Lisa was thinking about a phone call she needed to make. There was one person who would understand the significance of what had happened better than anyone else, someone who had been her mentor and friend throughout her career. Deputy Chief Robert Thompson had been like a father figure to her ever since she graduated from the police academy, and she knew he would want to know about this incident immediately. Lisa walked outside to her patrol car, which was still parked in front of the store. She could see the news crew setting up their equipment, and she knew that this story would soon be public knowledge whether she wanted it to be or not. The decision about how to handle the situation was being taken out of her hands. She got into her car and sat quietly for a moment, trying to process everything that had happened. Her hands were still shaking slightly from the adrenaline and stress of the past hour. She looked at herself in the rearview mirror and saw that her appearance showed the strain of what she had been through. Taking out her personal cell phone, Lisa scrolled through her contacts until she found Deputy Chief Thompson's number. She knew he was probably at home with his family, enjoying a quiet evening, but this could not wait until morning. This was the kind of situation that could explode into a major controversy if it was not handled properly and quickly. As she pressed the call button, Lisa realized that this phone call would likely change everything. Not just for her, but potentially for Morrison Stevens and the entire relationship between the police departments and the communities they served. There would be no going back after this conversation, no way to quietly sweep this incident under the rug. The phone rang once, then twice, and Lisa prepared herself to tell her mentor about one of the most difficult experiences of her professional life. Deputy Chief Robert Thompson was sitting in his living room, reading the evening newspaper and enjoying a cup of coffee when his phone rang. At 58 years old, Thompson had seen almost everything during his 35 years in law enforcement. He had worked his way up from beat cop to one of the highest-ranking officers in the state, earning respect from colleagues and community members alike. When he saw Lisa's name on his phone screen, he answered immediately. He had been her training officer when she first joined the force, and over the years, their relationship had evolved from mentor and student to close friends and colleagues. "Lisa, how are you doing? How did the school presentation go today?" Thompson asked warmly. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, and Thompson could sense that something was wrong. Lisa's voice, when she finally spoke, sounded strained and emotional. "Chief, I need to tell you about something that just happened. Something really bad." Thompson sat up straighter in his chair, immediately shifting into his professional mode. "What's going on? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay physically, but Chief, what happened tonight? I don't even know where to begin." Lisa took a deep breath and started from the beginning. She told him about stopping at the convenience store after the school event, about the 2 Westfield officers who approached her, and about everything that followed. Thompson listened in complete silence, his expression growing darker with each detail. When Lisa described being handcuffed and forced to sit on the store floor for over 30 minutes, Thompson stood up from his chair and began pacing around his living room. His wife, hearing the change in his voice, looked over with concern from where she was reading in the kitchen. "They did what?" Thompson asked, his voice barely containing his anger. "They handcuffed you, a 15-year veteran in full uniform?" "Chief, it gets worse," Lisa continued. "Even when witnesses came forward to support my identity, Even when the store owner vouched for me, even when they found evidence that I was telling the truth, they refused to believe me. They kept insisting everything was fake. Thompson was quiet for a long moment, processing what he had heard. He had dealt with cases of police misconduct before, but this was personal. Lisa was like a daughter to him, and the thought of her being treated this way made his blood boil. Lisa, please tell me you're planning to file a formal complaint about this incident. I don't know, Chief. Part of me just wants to forget it ever happened and move on. But then I think about what this means for other officers, for the community, for everything we're supposed to stand for. Thompson's voice became firm and decisive. Lisa, listen to me carefully. What happened to you tonight cannot be ignored or swept under the rug. This is exactly the kind of incident that destroys public trust in law enforcement. If we don't address it properly, it will only get worse. But Chief, you know what happens when these things go public. The media circus, the investigations, the way everything gets twisted and turned into something political. I'm not sure I'm ready for all of that. Thompson understood her concerns, but he also knew that sometimes doing the right thing required personal sacrifice. I know it's going to be difficult, but think about this. If they did this to you, a decorated officer in full uniform, what do you think they're doing to regular citizens who don't have badges and uniforms to protect them? Lisa had been thinking the same thing throughout the evening. The way Morrison and Stevens had treated her suggested that this was not their first time making such judgments based on prejudice rather than facts. You're right, Chief. I know you're right. Good. Now, here's what we're going to do. First, I want you to go home and write down everything that happened while it's still fresh in your memory. Include every detail you can remember, every conversation, every witness who was present. Then, first thing tomorrow morning, we're going to contact Internal Affairs, the FBI Civil Rights Division, and the media. Lisa felt a mixture of anxiety and relief at having a plan of action. The FBI? Do you really think this rises to that level? Lisa, when police officers violate someone's civil rights under color of law, that's a federal crime. What those officers did tonight wasn't just misconduct. It was potentially criminal behavior. Thompson paused for a moment, then continued, in a softer tone. I know this is scary, and I know it's going to be hard on you personally. But I've watched you grow from a rookie officer into one of the finest cops I've ever worked with. You have the strength and integrity to see this through. While they were talking, Lisa's phone had been buzzing with text messages and missed calls. The videos from the convenience store had already started spreading on social media, and people were beginning to recognize her and reach out. Chief, I think the story is already getting out there. People recorded everything on their phones, and I'm getting messages from reporters wanting to talk to me. Thompson was not surprised. In the age of social media and instant communication, incidents like this could go viral within hours. Don't talk to any reporters tonight. We need to be strategic about how we handle the media attention. The next morning came faster than Lisa had hoped. She had barely slept, spending most of the night writing down her detailed account of the incident and thinking about the consequences of going public with her story. Thompson arrived at her apartment early, bringing coffee and a grim expression. Lisa, I've been making some calls since we talked last night. The video from the store has been viewed over 1 million times already. The mayor's office has been getting calls all night, and the FBI has already reached out to me about opening an investigation. Lisa felt overwhelmed by how quickly everything was moving. This is really happening, isn't it? Yes, it is. And there's something else you need to know. Morrison and Stevens were suspended this morning pending the investigation. The Westfield police chief called me personally to apologize for what happened. Over the next several days, the story exploded into national news. The video of Lisa being handcuffed in her police uniform became a symbol of broader issues within law enforcement. Civil rights organizations rallied to her support, while police reform advocates used her case to call for better training and accountability. The FBI investigation moved quickly. Security cameras from the store provided additional footage that contradicted Morrison and Stevens' official reports. Witnesses came forward to testify about what they had seen and heard. The evidence was overwhelming. Got within 2 weeks, both officers, were terminated from the Westfield Police Department. Federal charges were filed against them for violating Lisa's civil rights under color of law. The case became a landmark example of how police officers could be held accountable for misconduct. Regardless of who their victims were, for Lisa, the personal cost was significant. The media attention was intense and sometimes intrusive. She received both support and criticism from different groups with different agendas. But she also received something unexpected: recognition and respect from her peers and the community. The Chicago Police Department promoted her to sergeant, acknowledging both her professionalism during the incident and her courage in pursuing justice afterward. She became a sought-after speaker on police reform and civil rights, using her experience to help train other officers and bridge divides between law enforcement and communities. The convenience store where it all began put up a small plaque thanking Lisa for her service and dedication to justice. Mr. Patel still greets her warmly every time she stops by, though now she's usually recognized by other customers who remember her story. Most importantly, the incident led to significant policy changes in both police departments, including mandatory bias training, improved procedures for officer-to-officer interactions, and better accountability measures for misconduct. Lisa's one phone call to her mentor had indeed cost Morrison and Stevens their jobs, but it had also helped create a more just and accountable system for everyone.